So this video is going to be about the Canadian Dietetic Registration Exam, also known as the CDRE, and I'm going to talk about my experiences with it, how I failed it the first time and went back to write it again, with some tips on how you can pass and be successful to get your full dietitian license. This video will be about what I did wrong, what I learned from it, but most importantly, how you can learn from my mistakes to ensure your success. Before I get into this video, please be sure to like this video and also don't forget to subscribe. So the first thing I want to talk about is failure, challenging the culture of failure in a world that sees it so negatively, but also specifically more in dietetics, because we've been socialized into a culture that rewards type A perfectionism that actually doesn't help us. What I see is like a lot of people wear it as like a badge of honor, like that makes them great, and okay, yes, you can do that, but I see the good side to it, but also the not so good side of it. So the good side of it is you can do a lot of things, you work very hard. The downside of it is constantly feeling inadequate and then feeling like you're the biggest failure ever if you fail something. I just think it's something that needs to change. That culture, what I find what it does is it rewards achievement and that constant striving for something that is unattainable, that perfection, and it doesn't give us permission to just be. And I mean just be as in just to exist, to not achieve anything, to not chase any kind of dream or kind of goal. And just, just be yourselves. I'm guilty of this too, 100%. And once you become socialized into it, like you really see it within yourself and you see it in your colleagues, and you have to ask yourself how it helps you. Like, does it help you or does it harm you? And I think most people, if they're honest with themselves, just like if I'm honest with myself, is that it's a bit of both. There is that harm aspect to it, but there's also that reward aspect to it. But sometimes I think that the harm can be a little bit more damaging if we're not careful in how we manage it. Failure is not the end of the world, okay? It is not. The society we live in now doesn't give us enough opportunity for failure. And I'm talking about the school system, I'm talking about like participation medals and awards that are given. I don't really remember how much if they were given in my day. Maybe a little bit, I don't know. I'm kind of an older millennial, so. It doesn't give you enough opportunity to fail. So nowadays in school too, it's like, you can't get held back, right? And when I was in school and I was in high school, I remember there were people who were held back because they didn't do well or they didn't pass the grade. But I don't really think that necessarily helps us. I don't think it always really helps people grow. Social media makes it worse because people can just post their best highlights of their life rather than showing the real mundane of living life every single day. Life is not always amazing. It has its ups and its downs. You win some, you lose some. Not everybody wins all the time. And anybody who shows you that and just shows you that in their social media is lying to you, okay? Because everybody deals with difficult times in life. There is a entrepreneur, if any of you follow Gary Vee, any of you who are interested in the entrepreneur space, he says some really interesting things, sometimes that I think are true. The part about failure, how you have to fail more in order to succeed, and how a lot of people, I'd say a lot of young people, like we'll just say under the age of 35, just aren't used to that concept of failure as much as maybe people who are older, because we've been put into a system that doesn't really allow us to fail, which I don't think has really benefited us. So try to fail more. Yes, that's actually my tip for you. Fail as much as you can. This may not apply to everyone, but if you didn't pass the first time, what the college actually does is sends you a tip sheet that goes, this is not actually it, this is just a random paper, sends you a tip sheet which tells you tips for you to pass the exam the next time or how to be successful for the next time. Read that very, very carefully. I read it over, I remember like 3 or 4 times after I had failed, just so, because the tips I found were actually very helpful to go into the exam the second time. It would be so awesome if they can give it to you the first time, but that's just not how it works. Do as many practice questions as you possibly can. There is a CDRE, Canadian Dietetic Registration Exam prep book. Everyone should have that book. There are a few questions in there, and there aren't many questions, but those questions are exactly the questions that they have on the exam. Now keep in mind, so I wrote the exam in 2015 or 16. It is now 2021, so it might have changed, but I still believe that the college puts out an exam prep guide. So make sure you do the questions and make sure you understand what the questions are asking. Because what's different from this exam from other exams is it's a scenario-based competency exam. It's not based on knowledge. So memorizing any facts or any details like that is not going to help you if you don't understand what the question is asking you to do, or asking what the question is asking you to answer. And there aren't that many questions in the prep book. I did for myself, which helped me a lot, was I made my own questions. I went through the CDRE prep guide where they had those example practice questions, and they'll explain to you, this is the competency, it's cognitive, it's, you know, like they break it down into different categories. And what I did was, using that, I made my own questions. I made them myself, and I'm like, okay. What would be a question that they would ask me? And I made my own questions. I made my own answers too, like A, B, C, D, to mimic the exam as much as possible, like mimic the practice questions as much as possible. And then what I did was I sent it off to one of my super smart friends in dietetics. She looked over them and she was like, damn, this is good. Like, these are good questions. This is like exactly what they'd ask you. I'm like, yeah. It was a little small win on my part, but that's how I learned to understand what it is that they wanted from me. If you can make your own questions that are exactly like the practice questions, which will be what's going to be on the actual exam, then you are good. When it comes to answering the questions, always answer the questions with the core principles in mind. So when I say the core principles of dietetics, what I mean is like the ethics and of the manual of how dietitians should practice according to ethics, I think. Ethics? I don't know if I got that right. What I mean by that is the jurisprudence. So the jurisprudence is our manual about how to practice, competently and ethically and fairly and according to the rules of the college. Always think of the questions and keep the core principles of professional ethics in mind based on the jurisprudence manual. The jurisprudence manual also has some practice questions as well that are related to ethics. Make sure you go over those questions too, because that jurisprudence is what influences the answers of the exam. It influences what you should pick as your final answer based on best scenario, like what you should do in that situation if you are a new dietitian. Jurisprudence. Check that out. This is advice for any exam you go into, but make sure you sleep well, you eat well for the exam. Do not cram study material right before. Don't do that. It's just not going to help you at that point. If you need to get exercise to relieve anxiety, I personally wouldn't exercise the day before, for me personally, because I find I'll be a little too tired and kind of a little bit muscle a little bit of muscle soreness, inflammation that kind of affects my thinking. So I would do it like the day before, not the night before the exam. The day before the night before of the exam. So the day before, you know what I mean. Take a few deep breaths before you write the exam, especially exam anxiety. Make sure you find a way to decompress and make sure you feel calm going into the exam. And the last part is, so this is for people who, if you didn't pass the first time or the second time, you have the option to appeal your exam with the college, which means you write a letter to the registrar or the college saying why you believe you should pass the exam. So I did appeal my exam back in the day. It was $75 to appeal. I don't know what it costs now today, because that was a couple years ago. It's probably more. I really don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I appealed, and you can decide whether or not it's worth your time, because I appealed and I paid the money to get a rejection letter back saying that I was wrong. It's up to you if you want to do that route. It might be worth a shot if you think you have an important case of why you should pass the exam, but my result was rejected. Just want to put that out there. I hope you found these tips helpful. There was about 5 tips there. Good luck. Learn from your mistakes the first time. Learn to understand what it is that they're trying to ask you and answer those questions. And I wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please be sure to subscribe and like this video, and I will see you in my next video.